So right now, what I'm doing is I'm seeding right into this buckwheat. This is a strip, maybe like probably 75 yards long. And then on the other side of this corn, this cultivated corn, I got a tilled up section that has been tilled up pretty much at least 4 times now. Every time I've cultivated the corn, I've worked that edge up. Now I did spray some simazine on the far end, so down at the far end there, we might not get much germination, but this right here is some buckwheat I planted right in the middle of this field to do a little test of how well I can get no-till brassicas to grow in here. There's a ton of water hemp in here too. In certain areas, it's just almost like straight water hemp I'm seeding into. You can see all this water hemp right here. It's just starting to put on its seed heads. All that is just millions of seeds. So this is a perfect time to get in here, seed this down, crush it all with the cultipacker and spray it. A lot of times you can actually get a decent kill on some of this water hemp when it's this big, because they'll snap off right at the bottom or at the stem. And you inject a little glyphosate into that when you spray. It seems like you get a better kill. When you got a bunch of small water hemp, they just bend over when you drive over them and the spray doesn't kill them. But them snapping off at the ground seems to help a lot. I mean, there'll be quite a few that probably survive, but there'll be some areas in here where the brassicas will probably come in. You can see this buckwheat couldn't even keep up with the water hemp that was in here, and this field is just full of it. But then you take a look over here, like look at my soybeans quick. See all the water hemp in there? Pretty pathetic. And those beans are really yellow because of the iron chlorosis. Look at all that water hemp right there. But then you take a look over here in my 38-inch row cultivated corn. Look at this. Really nice. Cultivation is definitely the way to go for corn in this field. I can't really grow beans in this field because they just get that iron chlorosis. I could plant them on 38-inch rows, but they're gonna turn yellow and not really do much. But yeah, look at this. But in this one spot where I broadcasted the buckwheat and tilled it in and left it, it just filled in with water hemp. Look at this. As thick as what this area is, this is what the corn would look like if I couldn't cultivate, because this stuff is Roundup resistant as soon as it gets about 6 inches tall. So this right here is the area I was just talking about that was at the end of the corn rows, and I would turn around down here when cultivating and I would always rip it up right at the end to keep the weeds down. I already got this seeded. You can see all the wintergreens and honeyhole seeds in here. This is definitely seeded at a lighter rate than what this no-till section is, because whenever you have a tilled area, you get almost 100% germination. I'm gonna come in here and pack this up with the cultipacker and then just do a right turn, go all the way out to the end of the field. This in here definitely has a higher seeding rate, but you never get the best germination when you do it this way. But there's really good soil exposure down here. There's no reason why I shouldn't. But after you crush all this down and spray it, you know, the seeds are sitting right on top. They need a good soaking rain to germinate, where if I run the cultipacker through here, it puts a lot of the seeds right under the soil. So maybe some of them too deep, but most of them, you know, I've had really good success just coming in here and packing it right on this loose ground. And if those seeds get covered up too, that's better than sitting right on top, because if they're going to germinate right on top, they're definitely going to germinate when they're in the soil. So the only way they won't germinate is if they're like probably a ½ inch to an inch deep. And I've even seen them germinate up to an inch deep sometimes too, where I rip it up really deep, make pretty deep ruts with the four-wheeler tires when driving through, and it doesn't really seem to affect. This is pretty powdery ground, so I'm gonna pack this down now. All right, as you can tell, just basically one pass got it down. Like this right here, this is a big water hemp plant. And you can see, I mean, it's gonna probably survive, but I'm gonna come in here and spray this now. Hopefully some of these weeds, the buckwheat will die easy, but some of these weeds are definitely gonna come back. But this is pretty insane. I mean, we got like almost an inch, like right here, probably close to 2 inches of material right now. When it dries down, it'll be less. But you see where that soil is? Like, look at where my hand is. That's like 3 inches of material covering the ground. Then this is really good ground. Look at the color of it, you know. It's not like we need to do no-till here, but whenever I till, I just get millions of weeds. So it's almost impossible to plant brassicas here when tilling, because you get more weeds than you do brassica, and they pretty much, you know, just take over. So in the past, I've just done no-till straight into this water hemp, the weeds I'm trying to compete with out here. And that's about the only way I can do it on this wet ground that's infested with water hemp. I mean, there's some seeds right there. I should probably go back and forth and kind of do some more squiggles to kind of put some more lines and stress points in this water hemp. Like when I go back and forth like a snake through this thing, it'll the lines on the cultipacker will go across the stems, not just straight like this. I'll do a few more passes and call it good. But yeah, pretty insane how easy this stuff crushes. But it's gonna come back, some of it will. You can see I have a heck of a time trying to grow soybeans in this field too. I mean, look at this. I can grow good corn because I can cultivate the corn at 38-inch rows, and the corn's not affected by the iron chlorosis like the soybeans are. If I plant the soybeans at 38-inch rows, yes, I can cultivate, but they're just going to turn really yellow like this, and it'll be a long time. They probably will never canopy over on 38-inch rows in here, but I might try a little bit of that next year in a section instead of broadcasting them like this. So yeah. All right, so back out here, this is that strip of buckwheat and water hemp that I seeded the brassicas right into. Got the brassicas probably too thick, actually. These brassicas probably shouldn't be quite this thick, but I think it'll turn out all right. Yeah, this no-till section's got quite a bit of weeds in it too. I mean, look at all the weeds in these beans. I can't even grow beans in here because of the iron chlorosis. Look how yellow they are. And I got all this water hemp in here. I can grow corn in here because the iron chlorosis in the soil doesn't really affect the corn, and I can cultivate the corn. I can grow beautiful corn stands in here. But beans and brassicas are a little bit of a struggle in this really dark ground filled up with weeds. So yeah, I'll have one more update. I'm gonna make it around the corner though. I got a tilled only section. I had tilled it a couple times throughout the year when I was cultivating the corn. I kept the weeds down really nice, but I think the weeds are coming back really strong. Look at this. I kind of figured it was going to do this, but I wasn't going to till it all the way throughout the end of the growing season, so I was going to put brassicas down eventually. But it's like a total loss. Look at that. That's just straight water hemp. I mean, there's brassicas in here, but man, is that thick with weeds. Unbelievably thick. So no-till is definitely the way to plant brassicas in this dark ground. I may do a little bit bigger section of it next year instead of just one strip, because I mean, a lot less weeds over here. This was planted the same day as what that was, and definitely less weeds. That was tilled up probably 3-4 times this year, and yeah, there's still millions of weed seed in there. So yeah, I'll update you one more time on this. Well, here we are, September 10th, and look at this. This is unbelievable. These are probably my best looking brassicas on the property this year. If anything, they might be a little bit too thick, but the reason why they're probably too thick is because remember, this buckwheat and water hemp and all the weeds in here were like chest high, and I didn't really get the best coverage on the seed. I probably just put down too much and it just hit the weeds and buckwheat and just fell right down to the ground. So it's probably slightly overseeded, but you can tell Look at right here. There's even a few leaves missing already on the edge here. Nothing's really walking through here yet. Some of my other thinner brassica plots, they're really walking through. You can see where the dirt's all churned up. This is really wet ground, as you saw when I worked it up. And I mean, that's why these brassicas are thriving. I mean, they got plenty of moisture. Some of my drier ground plots up there, the brassicas are starting to wilt a little bit because it's been probably a week and a half without rain. And they're really growing fast, needing a lot of moisture right now. Even these ones are starting to wilt a little bit, the leaves. You can tell they're looking for moisture, but we're gonna be getting a lot of rain tomorrow and tonight. And I'll just show you the other side of this corn where I tilled it up, planted the same day. And it's a complete failure. I knew it would turn into all weeds like that because it always does whenever I try to till plant a brassica plot in this field. This field is just full of water hemp. Here's soybeans right here that I just sprayed once and the weeds took over. The corn I was able to spray once and cultivate and have really good weed control by cultivating because these weeds are Roundup resistant basically. But man, these brassicas are knee high already. And you can see all the buckwheat and dead weeds that I crushed down underneath all these brassicas right in here. And you take a quick look in here. I mean, look at, we got bulbs in here. Another bulb right here, another one right here. And then all the forage right in between. So it's slightly overseeded. We won't have the biggest, like softball sized bulbs, but you can just tell it's probably about as thick as you'd want to plant brassica, where they're not small and they're not turning yellow and purple and kind of choking each other out. Staying nice and green. Once I get up to the corner, I'll show you what these ones look like around the bend where I tilled. They do not look good at all. There's nothing there really. It's like night and day difference. Mainly just because of the weed pressure taking over. But this being such loose, black, wet ground, I mean, when you no-till, sometimes on drier ground, they have a harder time taking off and growing fast and getting a good root system established. But on this loose, light, fluffy ground, it's basically like tilling them almost because the ground is just so loose all the time. You can no-till stuff pretty easily in here. So right here's the end of the no-till stuff. You can see even right here where it was no-till. I mean, a little bit of this short crawling type of weed coming in, but not much water hemp coming back. That's this stuff. And then right where I stopped tilling, just solid weeds, solid water hemp. I mean, you can't even barely see them in there. Like right here's one. The weeds got up and grew faster than the brassica and just completely choked out most of them. There's a few of them here and there and here. And then look at over there. Awesome. Like right here's a couple, but it's like junk. And then my corn's looking good. This is the area I cultivated. You can see I got really good weed control just mainly by cultivating. The spraying helped clean up the rows, but if I wouldn't have cultivated, this corn would have been a lot weedier. This is the most weed-free corn I've ever grown in this field because it's just mainly because we set it up for 38-inch row cultivation this year. I cultivated 3 times on it. So yeah, this field I can clearly not till plant my brassicas. The only reason why I tilled here is because I didn't have any buckwheat here. This is where I was turning around with the cultivator and tractor all summer, so I couldn't get a cover crop established here. So that's why I just figured maybe I'll try to throw some seed in, see what happens, and then I'll also have a really good, comparison video of the buckwheat I specifically planted for a strip of brassicas right there. Next year, my plan is to probably plant less corn in this field because I don't think the deer are going to eat up all this. This is like over an acre, and we got other areas of corn and soybeans and winter food, so we probably don't need this much corn. So next year I'm going to put a larger planting of brassicas on the other side of this field, closer to where they come out. And I'll have corn all on this side. I'll probably have like a third of this field and a brassica, and I'll do the buckwheat and do the no-till method into that, and it should turn out really nicely like it did this year. Unlike this spot on the edge here, you can see they're bigger, just like the no-till stuff, but they're pretty dry too. So yeah, thanks for watching. This is kind of a cool little comparison. This is some pretty dark ground. Not many people have this type of ground, so they don't deal with like as many weeds as this. I mean, this is like insanely weedy ground here. So I really have to be careful and choose the right method when I plant. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys.